Sometimes you carry yourself so well that people forget you're even carrying anything at all. They see you moving, they see you smiling, they see you showing up, but they have no idea what it costs you to keep going. They clap for your strength without realizing that half the time that strength is just you holding your breath, holding your tears, holding yourself together so the whole thing doesn't fall apart. You've learned how to tuck the pain behind polite answers, how to say, I'm fine, when you're anything but, and how to keep functioning in a world that doesn't stop moving just because your heart feels heavy. But here's what I want you to hear. God sees it. He sees the strain you don't speak about. He sees the thoughts you wrestle with when the lights are out and the room is quiet. He sees the way you push through. Even on the days when your soul feels bone tired, it's easy to believe people's applause is proof you're doing okay. But applause can't see the whole picture. People see the fruit, but God sees the fight. He knows the prayers you whisper under your breath while you're in the middle of doing dishes or driving to work. He knows about the nights you've lain in bed staring at the ceiling because your mind wouldn't stop running. He knows about the moments you've had to excuse yourself to the bathroom, not because you needed the restroom, but because you needed a safe space to let a tear fall without anyone asking questions. That's the beauty of the God we serve. He's not fooled by our performance. We can wear the makeup, the mask, the smile, the right words, but he reads the truth right off our spirit. And he doesn't just see it, he cares about it. You might think you've been enduring unnoticed, but heaven has had its eyes on you the whole time. While you've been telling everyone, I've got it, and I'm okay, there's been a gentle whisper in your spirit saying, you don't have to hide this from me. See, we're so used to managing how people see us that we forget we don't have to manage how God sees us. We can come to him exactly as we are, messy, tired, frustrated, even questioning. And when we do, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't turn away. He doesn't tell us to get ourselves together before we come close. He steps into that exact space where we've been silently breaking, and he begins to hold us together in ways we didn't even know we needed. But we've gotten good at convincing ourselves that it just keep moving. If we just keep working, if we just keep pushing, it'll somehow get better. We tell ourselves, I don't have time to fall apart. We wear that strength like armor, thinking it's what's keeping us from crumbling, when really it's God holding the armor in place all along. And the truth is, sometimes the reason you haven't fallen apart yet isn't because you're so strong. It's because he's been holding your fragile pieces together with his grace. You need to know that you're not overlooked. You're not invisible. Your exhaustion is not a secret to the one who made you. He's seen every moment you wanted to quit but didn't. Every moment you gave when you had nothing left to give. Every moment you kept showing up for people who didn't even notice you were breaking in the process. That's why he's sending reminders like this, not to shame you for being tired, but to reassure you that you're not running this race alone. And here's the thing, God's awareness of your strain is not passive. He's not just sitting there watching you struggle. He's actively weaving strength into your spirit in ways you can't measure. Some of you have been wondering how you've managed to keep going this far, and you think it's your determination. But if you really look back, you'll realize it's been his hand steadying you, his breath filling your lungs, his light keeping you from getting lost in the darkness. So even if nobody else notices, even if nobody else asks if you're okay, even if you never get the thank you or I see you from the people around you, know that heaven has been watching, and God's acknowledgement is more powerful than anyone's applause. He's seen the strain you don't speak about, and he's already making a way for your strength to be restored. Somewhere along the way, we started believing that feeling tired meant we were failing, that if we were truly strong, truly faithful, truly committed, we wouldn't feel worn out. We've been taught to see exhaustion as a weakness, as proof that maybe we're not built for this. Maybe we're not spiritual enough. Maybe we're not doing life right, but that's a lie. Being tired is not a sign you're weak. It's evidence that you've been showing up. It means you've been giving, loving, fighting, working, believing. It means you've been pushing through days when everything in you wanted to stop. It means you've been present even when it was painful. The truth is, tiredness is a byproduct of movement. You can't keep pouring into others without eventually feeling the weight of that pour. You can't keep running the race without your legs feeling the strain. You can't keep carrying loads, your family's needs, your responsibilities, your own dreams, without your spirit needing a moment to breathe. Feeling tired doesn't mean you're fragile. It means you've been faithful. It means you've been consistent. And that kind of weariness, that's holy ground. I know you've had moments where you've wondered if the weariness in your soul disqualifies you. You've looked around and thought, everyone else seems to be handling life better than me. But here's the secret, they're tired too. They might not say it, they might not show it, but no one runs through life without feeling the weight of the journey. And yet, we keep comparing our behind the scenes fatigue to their highlight reel smiles. We judge our worth by our energy levels, and when the energy dips, we start questioning everything. But the God who created you is not measuring your value by how effortlessly you move. He measures it by how you keep showing up when it's not effortless at all. Some of you need to stop shaming yourself for needing rest. Stop thinking you're less than because you don't have the same spark you used to. Seasons change. Even the strongest trees lose their leaves for a time, not because they're dying, but because they're preparing for a new season of life. You're not broken because you're tired. You're not less valuable because you need to sit down for a moment. Sometimes your tiredness is the very thing that reminds you you're human, and that's okay. God didn't make you to be an unfeeling machine. He made you to need Him, to lean on Him, to draw strength from Him when your own runs out. And maybe that's why He lets you feel the weight of it sometimes. Because if you could do it all in your own strength, you'd think you didn't need Him. But when you hit that wall, when you wake up and feel the heaviness before you've even moved, that's when you're reminded, I can't carry this alone. And right there, in that moment of honesty, God begins to carry what you can't. I want you to think back to a time when you thought you couldn't take one more step, but you did. When you thought you'd cry forever, but the tears eventually stopped. When you thought you'd never see the light again, but somehow the morning came. You didn't get there because you never got tired. You got there because you kept going in spite of the tired. That's not weakness. That's endurance. That's not failure. That's resilience. So if you're sitting in this season feeling worn, I need you to stop speaking defeat over yourself. You're not lazy. You're not incapable. You're not falling apart beyond repair. You're a fighter who's been in the ring a long time, and the bruises and the fatigue are just proof you've been in the fight. Don't let the enemy twist your weariness into shame. Wear it as a reminder that you have given of yourself, that you have loved deeply, that you have stood firm when it would have been easier to collapse. And hear me, God is not disappointed in you for feeling tired. He's not looking at you saying, why can't you handle more? He's saying, I see you've carried much. Let me carry you now. That's the beauty of His grace. He steps in where your strength stops. He doesn't ask you to fake energy you don't have. He offers you His when yours runs out. So don't confuse exhaustion with weakness. You're not weak because you're tired. You're proof that strength exists because you've been living it every single day. We live in a world that celebrates the hustle, that tells you to keep grinding, keep pushing, keep proving yourself as if rest is some luxury you have to earn. Somewhere along the way, we've started to believe that if we're not constantly moving, we're falling behind. But God doesn't see rest the way the world sees it. To him, rest is not laziness. Rest is not a sign you've stopped believing. Rest is a spiritual assignment. There are moments when God will intentionally slow you down, not because you're failing, but because he knows you've been running on fumes for too long. It's not easy to accept that, especially if you're someone who's used to being the strong one. You're the one who gets it done, the one people count on, the one who somehow keeps everything together. You've convinced yourself that the only way to prove your worth is to always be doing something. But here's the truth. You were never meant to live in constant motion. Even God himself rested on the seventh day, not because he was tired, but to set the example that rest is part of the rhythm of creation. If the one who holds the universe can pause, so can you. Sometimes God isn't asking you to fight harder. He's asking you to stop fighting for a moment so he can fight for you. There's a difference between quitting and resting. Quitting says, I'm done. Resting says, I'm trusting. And that's where faith becomes real, not in how much you can push, but in how much you can let go. Some of you are afraid to rest because you're scared that if you stop, everything will fall apart. But can I tell you something? If your world falls apart because you took a breath, then it wasn't built on the right foundation anyway. When God is holding it together, you don't have to wear yourself out trying to hold it all in place. He's not calling you to be the glue for everyone else's life while yours is slowly cracking. Rest isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's the moment you stop rehearsing every what if in your mind. It's the moment you stop carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. It's the moment you stop trying to control the outcome and simply trust that God is still moving, even when you're still. You have to learn to give yourself permission to sit in his presence with nothing to prove and nothing to perform. Because when you rest in him, he starts restoring you in ways that your own effort never could. Think about how tired you've been lately, not just in your body, but in your soul. You've been pushing, giving, showing up, and somewhere in the process, you forgot what it feels like to just be still. You forgot how it feels to wake up without the weight of the day already pressing on your chest. But God's invitation is still the same. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. That's not just poetry, that's a promise. And when God makes a promise, he keeps it. The problem is we often resist that invitation because we're addicted to being needed. We've tied our identity to our ability to keep going. But rest is not the absence of purpose. It's what prepares you to keep living out your purpose. A soldier doesn't fight every single day without pause. Even the strongest warrior knows there's a time to retreat, recover, and regain strength before stepping back into the battle. When you rest, you're telling God, I trust you enough to let you handle what I can't. You're releasing control. And in that release, something powerful happens. You start to realize that you're not the one holding everything together in the first place. God is. You're not the one making the sunrise or keeping the seasons in order or holding the stars in place. If he can manage all of creation, he can certainly handle the details of your life while you breathe. And maybe that's exactly what you need in this season. Not another strategy, not another push, not another to-do list, but a holy pause, a sacred moment where you say, God, I'm tired, but I'm here. I'm going to stop running for just a moment and let you carry me. Because the truth is, rest is not a reward you get after you've done enough. It's a gift God gives so you can keep going without losing yourself in the process. Sometimes the most powerful act of faith is not in how hard you work, but in how fully you rest in the one who's already working on your behalf. There are moments when words just won't come. You try to pray, but your mind feels like a blank page. You sit there in the quiet, knowing you need to talk to God, but all you can feel is the weight in your chest and the sting in your eyes. And then the tears start falling, not the kind you can hide or blink away, but the kind that come from a place so deep you couldn't explain it if you tried. Those tears, the ones you cry alone when no one else sees, are not wasted. They are not meaningless. They are prayers too. We've been taught to think that prayer has to be perfectly phrased, eloquent, full of the right scriptures and the right declarations. But the truth is, God isn't looking for polished speeches. He's looking for truth. And sometimes the truest prayer you can offer is the tear that slips down your face when you can't even find the words to say, "Help me." Those tears are your spirit speaking in a language your mouth can't form. They are the soul's way of saying, "This is too heavy for me to carry alone." You might think no one notices, but heaven leans in when you cry like that. God collects every tear. He doesn't just watch them fall. Scripture tells us he keeps them in a bottle, not because he needs to store water, but because every drop is precious to him. Each one carries a piece of your story, a moment of your struggle, and he values every single one. You are never crying into an empty space. You are crying into the presence of a God who hears in silence, who answers without you having to perform. There are people in your life who may never know the battles you've fought quietly, the nights you've spent wiping your face so no one would see. And it's okay. They don't have to. Those tears weren't for them. They were for the one who knows you better than you know yourself. When you've got nothing left to say, he hears the cry underneath the silence. And sometimes the most powerful prayer is not in what you say to God, but in what you allow him to feel with you. I think some of us feel guilty for crying, like it's a sign that we've lost faith. But tears don't mean you've stopped believing. They mean you've been holding on for a long time. They mean your heart has been stretched to its limits. They mean you care deeply about what you're going through. If anything, your tears are evidence that you are still human enough to feel and still hopeful enough to bring that pain to God instead of burying it. And can I tell you something? God understands tears better than anyone. He created the body in a way that sometimes the release comes through weeping because the soul needs a way to breathe again. Even Jesus himself wept, not because he didn't believe in the resurrection, not because he doubted his Father's plan, but because grief is part of love. Loss is part of life. Pain is part of this human journey, and tears are one of the ways we walk through it. Some of you have been trying to hold it all together so tightly that you've forgotten what it's like to let go. You've been swallowing your pain so no one else gets uncomfortable. You've been editing your emotions because you think strength means silence. But maybe God is inviting you to cry in his presence, to stop pretending you're fine when you're not. Because the moment you do, something shifts. It's not that the problem disappears, but the weight starts to feel lighter because you're no longer carrying it alone. There's a kind of healing that comes only when you let the tears fall without shame. You don't have to explain them. You don't have to justify them. You don't have to turn them into a speech. Just let them be. Let them be the prayer that says, "God, I don't even know what to ask for right now, but I need you." And he will meet you there, not with judgment, but with comfort. Those tears you've been crying in the middle of the night, in your car, in the shower, they've all been heard. They've all been received. They've all been translated into the language of heaven. And one day, the same God who counts them will be the same God who wipes them away. It's hard to rest when you can't see the results, when you've been praying, believing, and waiting, and it feels like nothing's changing. The temptation is to think that maybe God has forgotten you. You look around and see other people getting their breakthrough, other people moving forward, other people receiving answers, and you start to wonder if your prayers got lost somewhere on the way to heaven. But here's what you need to hold on to. Just because you can't see him moving doesn't mean he's not working. God works while you wait. Waiting can feel like the hardest part of faith because it strips you of control. You can't speed it up. You can't force it. You can't manipulate the timing. All you can do is trust. And that's where most of us struggle, not because we don't believe God can do it, but because we're afraid of what happens if it doesn't happen when we think it should. But his timing is not your timing. And his way of moving doesn't always look like movement to you. Sometimes God is doing more behind the scenes than you would believe if you saw it. Think about a seed planted in the ground. You can water it, nurture it, check on it every day. But for a long time, you won't see anything happening above the surface. If you didn't know better, you might think nothing's going on. But underground, the seed is breaking open. Roots are forming. Life is being prepared. It's only a matter of time before what's been growing unseen starts to push through into the light. That's what God is doing in your life right now, setting things in motion that you can't yet see, preparing you for a moment that will make sense later. Some of you have been working, praying, and believing for so long that you've convinced yourself that the silence means nothing is happening. But the silence is not evidence of God's absence. It's often proof of his preparation. He's aligning people, opening doors, and removing obstacles that you don't even know are in the way yet. He's protecting you from opportunities that aren't ready for you and protecting you from stepping into seasons you aren't ready for. It's not a no. It's a not yet. And I know it can feel unfair. You've been faithful. You've been obedient. You've been doing your best to hold on. And it seems like you're still stuck in the same place, but you're not stuck. You're stationed. There's a difference. Being stuck means there's no plan, no progress, no purpose. Being stationed means you're exactly where you need to be until the next assignment comes. God doesn't just place you anywhere without intention. If you're still in this season, it's because he's still doing something here. When you start to understand that God is working even when you can't track him, you learn how to wait differently. You stop pacing the floor and start trusting his process. You stop measuring the weight by how long it's been and start measuring it by what he's producing in you while you're there. Because the truth is, the weight is not wasted. Every day he's building patience in you, strengthening your faith, refining your vision, and preparing your character for the blessing you've been asking for. I think sometimes God lets the wait stretch longer than we expect so that when the breakthrough comes, we'll know without a doubt it was him. If it happened the way we planned, we'd be tempted to give ourselves credit, to say it was our hustle or our connections or our strategy. But when it comes in a way you couldn't have orchestrated, at a time you couldn't have predicted, through people you didn't even know, then you know it was God. And that kind of testimony changes the way you see everything. So if you're in the middle of waiting right now, I want you to hear this. God is still moving while you're resting, while you're sleeping, while you're working your everyday job, while you're going through your routine. He's arranging things in your favor. He's working on hearts, opening opportunities, and lining up moments that will collide perfectly with your destiny. You may not see the pieces coming together, but one day you will, and you'll realize he never stopped working on your behalf. Don't mistake the quiet for inaction. Don't let the delay make you doubt his promise. If he said it, he's going to do it. And when it happens, it won't just be on time. It will be right on his time. Right now, you might feel like you're running on empty. You wake up and it feels like you're already drained before the day even begins. You try to push through, but the weight on your shoulders makes every step heavier. And maybe you've been wondering if you'll ever get that spark back, if you'll ever feel strong again, if you'll ever wake up without the heaviness pressing down. But here's the thing, God's strength is not something you have to manufacture. It's something he gives, and he gives it in his timing. Renewal doesn't always happen the moment you ask for it. Sometimes he lets you walk through a season that feels like wilderness so that when the strength returns, you'll know exactly where it came from. There's a reason the scripture says you will run and not grow weary, walk and not faint. That's not describing a person who never gets tired. It's describing a person who knows where to go when they are tired. God doesn't promise that you'll never feel worn out. He promises that he'll renew you so you can keep going. And that renewal often comes in waves. not all at once. He's not just interested in giving you a quick burst of energy. He's building a foundation of strength that will last for the road ahead. Sometimes we want God to fix the fatigue without touching the root of it. We want him to make us feel better, but not deal with the habits, mindsets, or relationships that are draining us. But God's renewal is deeper than just a physical refresh. It's a reset for your soul. He wants to restore you in such a way that the same things that used to drain you won't have the same power anymore. And that takes time. You might feel like you've been waiting too long for that fresh strength, but renewal doesn't happen on your schedule. Just like the seasons shift in their own time, God brings renewal when the moment is right. Think about the trees in winter. They look bare, almost lifeless, but deep inside, they're still alive. Beneath the surface, life is preparing for a comeback. And when spring comes, it happens suddenly. One day it's cold and empty, and the next day color starts to return. That's how God works. You might feel like you've been in a long winter, but spring is coming. And when it comes, it's going to bring life you thought you lost. There's something about God's timing that can be frustrating when you're in the middle of the wait, but beautiful when you see it in hindsight. You'll look back and realize he was giving you what you needed all along. Small deposits of grace to get you through, little reminders that he hadn't forgotten you. Moments of unexpected joy that kept you from giving up completely. Those were all part of the renewal process. He was teaching you how to depend on him daily, not just in emergencies. And when that renewal fully comes, it won't just restore the strength you had before. It will take you beyond it. Because God doesn't just replace, he increases. He doesn't just give back what was lost, he multiplies it. The strength he's preparing you for will allow you to walk into the next season with endurance you didn't have before. Faith that's been tested and proven, and a deeper trust that he is who he says he is. I know it's hard when you're tired and you feel like the finish line is still far away. I know it's tempting to think you've already given your all and there's nothing left to give. But the same God who brought you through every storm before will breathe fresh wind into your spirit again. You won't always feel like this. You won't always be this worn down. Renewal is coming. Strength is coming. And when it arrives, you'll run without growing weary. You'll walk without fainting. And you'll see that every moment of exhaustion was just a setup for a greater outpouring of his power in your life.